Hello. Today I'm presenting about a company called Uber. I'm sure many of you have heard about this company and the groundbreaking innovation it has brought to the whole world. And today I'll be focusing on this company alone and talk about how this company have impacted the world. So, um, first of all, we have all run into taxi issues. Whenever you go, you kind of have to take taxis in the past if you don't rent a car. But there are some key disadvantages of taking taxis. First of all, it's extremely expensive. Of course, for example, if you ever been to New York, you know how freaking expensive it is, especially when we're jamming traffic. It just gets way worse. And like in New York, the taxis are really hard to get. You usually have to wait a long time to just get a available taxi to get to where you are going. And they're very inconvenient. Like I said, you have to kind of stand at the curb, waving your hand or the bill like a crazy person. It's not something everyone likes to do, and it takes a long time. You have to wait for these taxis to come by, and if there's a jerk just jumps in line in front of you, you can't really do anything about it. So there's so many disadvantages with taxis. You don't want to take them. So now you wonder, is there a better alternative right now? Actually, I'm sorry. Okay, actually, we're gonna move on to the model of taxi. First of all, all major cities or all major taxi services, they're issued license by the government or the agencies. So what is happening, as you can see right here, they only issue so many licenses that they usually kind of issue less license than there are demand. So what we have right here is a big shortage, and people are paying more, as you can see right here, more than the equilibrium, and the quantity is way less than equilibrium. So that's what's causing all these problems. So now you're gonna be wondering, is there a better alternative? So alternative, well, there's Uber. So with the emergence of Uber, it is one of the first companies to introduce the idea of sharing economy, or some people call it gig economy. It is basically the sharing of physical and intellectual resources among all humans. Um, this idea has radically changed the entire world because now you're able to utilize resources that are kind of limited to a smaller population, but with sharing economy, you're able to kind of help. I mean, help everyone getting access to these resources, and so that's where the future is going. And Uber is one of the first companies to figure it out. So the business model of Uber is actually extremely simple, and I'm going to briefly talk about it right here. So if you're someone trying to go to a place, let's say going to see a movie, you don't want to take a taxi, so you call Uber. What you do is you have your own account on your phone, and when you open Uber, it's gonna show you all the nearby drivers, and you can see the ranking, you can see what type of car they're driving, and all kinds of information that you want. And all you do is select the car and tell them where you're going. And Uber, as an app, also a platform in this case, it's gonna tell the driver where to go, and it's gonna tell the driver where to pick you up. You can even you can even specify where to pick you up, and the driver will always be there. It's extremely accurate, extremely efficient. Basically, in this process, you eliminate the entire tax. The tax is not involved in this case. The drivers, they drive their own cars, which is, if you're on a job or if you're just kind of bored at home trying to make some few extra bucks, it's a great way to earn some money. And for the riders, you get to sit in a private car, which is usually way better than these taxis that they're driving. They're like 20 years old, but these private cars are, so I've seen people driving Tesla or even some really nice Mercedes picking people up, and that's definitely a way nicer experience than the usual taxis we're talking about right here. What is so great about the system is that the consumers are paying at least 26% cheaper to get to their destination, because the drivers are only paying very low commissions, about 15 to 20% based on where you are or the time frame of the day. Um, the drivers aren't dealing with license or other just stupid stuff you don't really care about. So the price is way cheaper, and there's less waiting time, and you know exactly what ride is. So that's really good. And what's the best feature about this whole platform is that the demand will equal to supply. That's what's really making this important, and I'll show you with the graph. So as you can see right here, since there's no license involved in this case, there will be as many drivers as there are riders. People who can find a ride on a typical day will just kind of go home and just kind of rest, because the riders will know exactly where you are, and then they'll always usually pick the closest and with higher ratings. The market is usually at the equilibrium. You don't have to worry about high prices or anything. Everything's pretty transparent. So what's happening is when there's no license involved, everything kind of shifts right here. That's the equilibrium. You're paying lower price. You're paying lower price, and there's more quantity involved. More quantity of drivers, of course. So you don't have to wait as much, you wait longer, and you're paying less for a ride. So that's why Uber has been kind of just killing the taxi service, especially these years. So there are some key innovations of Uber that I have to go over real quick. So first of all, like I said, you're hailing a ride based on rating and location. So you're always getting the closest car that's closest to you, and you can see the rating, because when a passenger gets off, he or she can actually rate the ride based on his or her experience. So you know the kind of car you're getting and the service that you're expecting from the ride. And that's something you cannot do with taxis, because you're just kind of hitting your luck. If you get a bad person, you get a bad person. You have no choice over it. And there's a better rating system, as I said. The riders can actually rate the driver based on many factors, and I'm not going to go over the detail. What's really important right here is that there's no cash involved, because the riders and the drivers have set up their own accounts on their apps. So they kind of link their bank account to these apps. So when a rider gets on the car, everything kind of, all the things start counting, all that stuff, the math, things we don't really understand. But anyways, once you get off, all you need to do is kind of authorize the purchase, and Uber will actually kind of charge from your bank account, and it will take off the commission, and the rest of the money will go straight to the driver's account. So you don't really have to kind of take out your wallet or anything. You just kind of pay with your phone, and then there's no NFC chip involved, and everything's online. So that's what's so great about this whole system, because you don't have to carry a wallet with you, and everything's extremely secure, because everything's going through online. When there's no cash, you have to worry about other stuff, and the safety here, because the drivers have to go through some background checks, but they're very basic. But at least that they've gone through background checks, and their location, the car. You can see the history of your rides. So everyone knows where you are. There's tracking, and you don't have to worry about some bad person, kind of like what you would call a black cab, kind of just taking rides without a license, and it's actually way safer and more secure than your average taxis, and it benefits everyone. So that's what a great platform is. It should be benefiting both the user and the provider. In this case, the riders are getting a cheaper and faster ride. The drivers are paying less on commission, so they're earning more profit, and now they're probably getting tips, which is something that I cannot go over, because we haven't really seen this thing paying out after the court order, so I'm not going to go over the detail about that. But here's something that's really cool that Uber's developing, and actually have developed. It's already in some certain cities. I'm just going to go through this real quick, because this is not an essential part of the presentation. But Uber can actually do deliveries. So for example, if you want to, there's people has gotten their kittens delivered. So let's say you want to deliver a book, or let's say you want to get a book from Barnes and Noble. Well, you want it in 1 hour. Well, you can use Uber now instead of UPS or others. What's so called one-day delivery, because you have to order at a certain time before noon, and it will only deliver like almost at night, and you're paying like $20 minimum for the service. But with Uber, you can get a driver to pick up something for you, and then he'll drive back, and you can you can delta away without these big UPS trucks or FedEx trucks, and it's one-on-one. It's like I said, it's way more secure, and it's way cheaper, and supply equals demand. You've heard about drones and all this stuff. They're not going to work for another at least a couple of years, and this is probably one of the best solutions for transportation at this moment. Well, let's talk about competitions. Obviously, an idea as simple and great as Uber, there's going to be a lot of competitions coming in from pretty much everywhere. So these are the competitions that Uber is facing. First of all, these are the U.S. competitions, of course. One of the biggest is Lyft. Then there's Get, and there's Waze. I'm sure many of you would have heard about these companies. Actually, in China, the biggest competitor is called Didi Chuxing. It is the biggest what you call Uber in China. Essentially operate the same way, but I will go later into detail. So let's look at the investments in these companies. So Didi Chuxing, the one I was telling you in China, it just got another $1 billion investment from Apple. They are the biggest in China, and they provide about 11 million rides a day. So they have occupied a pretty good market, as you can see. And Uber is actually going into the Chinese market. And according to some sources, there's reports saying that Didi Chuxing is actually losing billions a day. Losing billions because of the fierce battle with Uber in China. And then there's Lyft. Lyft has just got $500 million investment from GM, General Motors. And then there's Get, got $300 million from Volkswagen, a company based in Germany. What's worth noting though, Get is actually smaller. I mean, they don't have much of a market share here in the U.S. They're mostly in New York and the surrounding area, but they're bigger in Europe. I think that's why Volkswagen chose to invest in Get. And Waze we commonly know it as the kind of GPS app, the app that directs you to places. But since it's owned by Google, and Google's obviously going to jump on this bandwagon, they just enrolled a pilot program, and they kind of employ, just hired 25,000 workers from Google and some other company to test out this thing they're doing. So what's unique about Waze from these, including Uber companies, is that you get rides based on where you're going. So it is trying to match match the driver and the user who are going in the same direction. That's what they're trying to do, but it's really hard to say in the future, because Waze, obviously Google's a big tech companies. They may have other innovations that can make everything much easier or cheaper. So it's really hard to tell at this point. So based on everything I've just showed you, there are many other factors that have led me to conclude that the market that all these companies are competing in is actually a monopolistic competitive market, because there's very low barriers to entry. Essentially, anyone with with an engineering background and a good idea can actually do this. And so what you can see right here is that let's assume first that they're in long run equilibrium, where no one really is profiting. So what each company will be trying to do is that to push out the demand curve by advertising, by marketing. That's where actually most of the money are spent, to kind of push the demand curve out. So that's why to leave a profit margin for themselves. But as every online business or online platforms, what's going to happen in the long run is that the big fish, what we would call big fish, eat the small fish. Essentially, there's going to be one giant company kind of consolidate everyone else, kind of, and squeeze out all the competitors, and it will eventually become monopoly. So if you think about it, there's Google as the only search engine, But when Google emerged, there were actually dozens of other search engines out there, but they all kind of failed. And then the existing ones are just barely have any market share whatsoever, and they're just struggling to survive. For example, Yahoo, it's going away. It's not going to survive much longer. So what happens if let's say if Uber is lucky enough to survive and develop into a monopoly in the ride-sharing market or the ride-sharing economy? This is the first scenario, which is I think this more likely scenario that's going to happen, is that they're going to raise the commissions a little bit, which might turn some drivers away, but they only raise it so much that not so many people will kind of turn to other hailing service, for example Lyft. So they're going to keep just enough of their customer base, but they're going to profit from their higher commissions. That's the scenario I think that's most likely to happen. But there's another scenario. If there's a monopolistic competition, they can have a perfect price discrimination, which in this case is much easier because it's an online company. Again, diversified pretty quickly. But in this case, perfect price discrimination, nothing's perfect. But I think Uber can try their hardest to kind of try to capture the market as much as they can. So the existing diversifications based on price discrimination is that there's a couple Uber, different levels of Uber. There's Uber X, Uber Black, Uber SUV, Uber Lux. So it's kind of in the order of becoming more luxurious and more expensive from top to bottom, and these are all exist already, and I think this is a way that they're trying to diversify their services. So that's going to some of the challenges. The most immediate challenge Uber is facing right now is the finances, the cash flow. Last year, just in 2015, the first half of the year, they actually lost $987 million. That's almost $1 billion in half a year. And in most startup companies, this would just kill it. There's if you're losing $500 million, which is half a year, then who's going to invest in you? But Uber's different. Uber has a lot of investors, and each investor is actually pouring money, a lot of money, into Uber, and it actually has $9 billion in investment. So it's really hard to say. Uber might just emerge as the biggest winner in the end with their $9 billion investment, just sitting around. And the opportunities that Ubers have, it's absolutely stunning. Based on a new study by Pew, there's only about 15% of Americans who have used the ride-hailing service. That leaves out 85% of us who's never used Uber or any other hailing service. And if Uber will be able to come on top, this is going to be something big. Uber still has a substantial portion of the market that it can occupy. And next, there's only 6% of the Americans who have used ride-hailing for grocery deliveries. Like I said, that's something Uber has came up with recently, and it has even bigger market in this case. And different from transportations, if you're delivering groceries, as people with experience with Amazon, you can deliver a lot, and that's going to be a lot of money if Uber can capture the market. So that is it. That's my brief overview of Uber, and I'm out. Go Bears, guys. Go Bears.